Hey guys, it's Sean
And Tyler?
from the Board Assembly. We came up with a challenge for ourselves about 3 weeks back, and that was what if big brands hired us to build the bots for them? And we're talking really, really big brands like Netflix, like Google, McDonald's, Shiseido, you get the idea. So today, we're going to be walking you through the thought process of two bot builders who have been building for nearly 4 years now for 6 to 8 figure e-com brands. And we're going to be breaking down the exact steps that we go through for this bot build. So on a very high level, the Netflix bot was created because I'm not sure about you, but personally, when I get into Netflix, Netflix shows me a host of different recommendations, and I go through a little bit of analysis paralysis. So what we created was a bot that's able to recommend you exactly what you want to watch by having you push through a couple of variables. And you actually see Tyler demonstrating it on the screen right now. And I'll let Tyler take over. He'll walk you through how the bot works, how it looks like on the internals, and then I'll walk you through the high level again.
Okay, so essentially, what Sean was saying is that I'm just going through the bot. It's a questionnaire where it'll ask you a certain amount of questions, and then based on those answers, it'll recommend certain movies. So I've just went through kind of the first, let's say, 3 or 4 questions here. So I answered my main genre is going to be sci-fi, secondary, action adventure. How long the runtime will be is less than 2 hours. And then the release date, which is 2010 to 2020, and then the popularity score, which is basically just saying like how how much marketing was behind that movie. So like something with like 3 or less is going to be not too much marketing at all, and then 10 is something that like everybody's heard about or maybe seen. And then there's also movie collections, which isn't really part of the popularity score, but I just wanted to have it as a variable in there. So I'll put 3, so it'll be unpopular. And now it's going to spit out all the questions I've answered to make confirm that these are the ones that I want. And I'll say get recommendations. And now it's going to spit out some recommendations for me right here. You could see right here, I got quite a few recommendations.
Right. So you might be thinking, okay, so all of this actually goes on within the bot. It's just a simple quiz funnel where we only have 5 to 10 different inputs and we train the bot to spit out the inputs from there. And the answer is actually no. We built all of this with bot sheets. So Tyler, if you just do me a favor and pull up the bot sheets tab, so you can see that we have about 90 different inputs in here. And this can be as many as you want. It can be 100, it can be 500, it can be 1,000. And what we're really training the bot to do here, or what we're telling the bot to do here, is to comb down each genre, the runtime, the release date, and then spit out a dynamic input. So Tyler's going to take over here and he's going to be walking you through how the internals look like. And yeah.
Hmm. Okay, so we'll go over kind of the build process a little bit here. And essentially what we did for this flow is we cut it up into 5 subsequential flows. The reasoning for that is just for organization purposes. It's easier to kind of send people in certain directions than to have it in one massive flow and then try to have it all interlinking. It's pretty nice when you're doing this when you're working with a team as well. So essentially, this is the starting flow right here. Now, the way it is connected is connected through a ref URL, which is just a clickable link, and then it would bring you to the chatbot here. But you can imagine this being connected to, say, Netflix directly, and at the bottom corner, maybe on the right-hand side or on the left-hand side, there could be a chat bubble, and then you could chat with the bot and then get recommendations from there. That's just an example use case. So this first message, there's not much to it. We had some other kind of options here, but they're obviously not connected. So we just kind of left them be inside there. But essentially it just says ready to watch and get some recommendations. You click let's go. This will bring you to the second flow, which is movie recommendations. So let me just go over here, movie recommendation variable. And this is the flow that basically goes through all the questions that we went through in the kind of live example. So first it'll check to see if you've already went through the bot right here. That's kind of what this condition does. If it's your first time, it'll give you this saying like, okay, I'm going to need to ask you a couple questions here, and it'll ask you your movie genre. Then it's going to ask you what your secondary movie genre is, and then it's going to ask you the runtime, the release date, and then the popularity score. So we could have, of course, changed these questions to whatever we wanted. This was just the most kind of appropriate that we wanted to use. But if you wanted to do something completely different, for example, like Sean came up with the start of the video, where we could do it for an e-commerce brand, say for skincare, you can ask like, what are your skin needs? Like, do you have dry skin? Like, what are your problems? And then have certain recommendations based on those problems. So it's pretty easy
And
to
from
kind
a
of
very
change those
high
questions.
level overview here, there are two ways you can be running this skincare quiz. You can be running it either top of funnel or middle funnel. So top of funnel would be more like client acquisition. It's the typical TikTok into PDP. It's the typical where you have your influencers showing off a product. Basically, it's to get the customer's foot into the door, right? So you go through a mini conversation or mini quiz to get like, hey, what product would we ideally recommend this customer? You get their email, you put them on an email drip sequence, and then you just convert them over a period of a week. That's a standard. The other way that you could really be running this is you could be running it middle funnel. And I know that a lot of e-com brands are actually doing like, hey, if they bounce, we're just going to offer them a 20% off, or we're going to have a influencer talking about how amazing the product is. Why not have the customer go through a quiz funnel? Because have you ever thought that after adding the product to their cart, they might not actually know if that product is the right fit for them? And but just by holding their hand and telling them like, hey, this would be the right fit for you, like I would say your chances of conversion are exponentially higher. So that's just another example. Tyler's going to continue walking you through the flow.
Hmm. So when we originally started this bot, we kind of thought about having like a lot more genres, as you could see in these two kind of messenger nodes. But we quickly realized that like we would need so many titles from bot sheets to be able to populate that, because if you have a lot more options, then you need a lot more kind of um, titles just to fill in those options, right? So I didn't want to make it so the bot would give in a bunch of like, oh, sorry, we couldn't find any movie recommendations with the specific parameters that you chose, with the specific variables, I should say.
And
So
just to
what
add, it's not that we can't do 500 variables, but it's just this is just a minimum viable bot, and we're just showing you proof of concept.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just wanted to kind of limit the choices so it's more or less always going to show some type of movie recommendations based on the choices you picked. Now, that being said, I didn't have too many titles, like movie titles to go off of for the older genres. So like 1990 or less, 2000s, and then 2000 to 2010, I got some, but not a crazy amount. So that's why I chose like 2010 to 2020, because I know I have quite a few there in 2020 as well. Plus, I got quite a few titles. So, anyways, enough about the variables. The last portion here, which is kind of the more important portion, is what's actually connected right here, which is bot sheets. So you could see that this is just an action block, but this is what creates this gallery right here of all your options. So I'll just show you a little bit of what that looks like. And essentially, it is a 5 criteria. They call it criteria. I call it a variable, but this criteria is what determines when they go through that quiz funnel, what they're going to get. So these 5 criteria kind of determine all the titles that are going to show up. So this is what it looks like right here. You pick the right worksheet. So if you could see right here that movie recommendations, and I did a square gallery. Of course, you can change to horizontal if you really wanted to. And then the amount of cards shown inside the gallery. I just did 9 or plus. I don't think we have enough movies to really populate something that had 9 or plus anyways. But either way, if we did, that would show 9 or plus. If the flow has no response, then it will go to this flow. So this is just the like unable to find any movie recommendations. Do you want to change your variables? And then they would go click a button and then change some type of variable to hopefully get some recommendations. Now this is the important part right here where you get to decide the kind of columns that you're going to be going off of. So column D is movie genre, and that's connected to the quiz funnel number 1. And I did contains instead of any of the other options here. And the reasoning for that is because some of the movie titles actually had sci-fi and horror. So when you do contains, you can actually have it so it'll display on both. So if you pick science fiction, it'll still display this title. And if you pick horror, it'll still display this title. Obviously, you still have to have these ones that are matching because I did end. If I did or, it would basically show pretty much everything. So I did end and then E, end, and so on. So you just repeat that process 5 times. And then at the bottom here, I didn't really have much. I just show buttons and do it in a random order every time. So that is it for this. And then that's essentially our Netflix bot in a nutshell. I know I didn't go in every single individual flow here, but the other two are more or less like this one right here is basically more or less the exact same here. It's just connected to the unable to find movie recommendations right here. And then they would click a button saying change a variable. And then it'll ask them some questions like, oh, what variable would you like to change? And then once they change that variable, it sends them back into the movie recommender, which is the flow that we just went into with bot sheets here.
Right, so that pretty much wraps it up from myself as well as Tyler. I believe that next week we would either be going after the KFC bot or the Shiseido bot. The Shiseido bot is more or less similar to the strategy that you see on screen here right now. So we're probably going to go with KFC. But if you have any questions whatsoever, or if you want to bounce any ideas, feel free to reach out to myself or Tyler at thebotassembly.com, and we will be more than happy to talk with you.
All right, take care, guys.